Hello, everybody. Welcome to this video. Thanks for tuning in. I have the lovely Candice here with me. We're going to do a little synchronicity soul sister Sunday. And we're just kind of going to share some of our own synchronicities and conversations that we've had. Things maybe we've been noticing in our own personal lives, in the collective, energetically. And we pulled some cards. Candice might do a little gene key line up with what we might be experiencing right now, or astrological lineup. Might talk a little bit about dream time. We're just going to kind of see where this leads. And of course, our intention is the highest levels of love, light, union, and communion. And we started talking like 15 minutes before, and we're like, where do we go? There's so many topics always that we can cover. All right, I'm going to. So where to begin? Some of the synchronicities, I mean, there's a fun astrological lineup today. You mentioned, Candice, and I mean, or are we going to jump right into algorithms?
I know, right? Well, I was just like looking at your chart and my chart specifically, and the chart today, because I wanted to see if we had anything that was lining up with it. And we do, both of us do.
Ooh.
You have the 60-second key in your chart. And so do I. I have it in my Mercury. So my Mercury is in the 60-second key in my own chart, right? So I'm getting an extra highlight today because today our sun is in Cancer in 62, and Mercury is conjunct that.
Oh.
Right. They're both together in 62. And so we need to look at what is 62. That's important.
So this is, you guys, just to give you guys a little, Candice talked a little bit about what the gene keys were in our last video, and not just the gene keys. What's the other one?
Oh, human design.
Yeah, human design. And
I don't know if you can see that. That might be so small. Can you?
You can kind of see it. It looks like a diamond.
You can see the wheel, right?
Yeah.
This is Cancer in the 9th house, and you can see there's a tiny little dial there that says 62, and there's a sun and Mercury in Cancer in the 9th house all together. And if you look over a little bit, you also see Black Moon Lilith is the little few doors over.
What does that mean for this? Oh, you haven't really gone into it yet.
No, well, Lilith is just like they call it the dark side of the moon. It's not really an actual
my favorite album.
Yeah, it's more of a spot of like a place of consciousness, almost like, I almost want to say like a blind spot for us that has some darkness and unconsciousness to ourselves about a certain thing that can be highlighted and brought to light. We can illuminate that. Some people like to empower it and say, oh no, it's the empowered dark feminine, but I think it's just a blind spot for us.
Yeah.
And with a certain flavor to it.
As you were saying that, I was seeing a dark spot on the diamond because it looked like a diamond. So I'm like, okay, I'm seeing like that little speck on the diamond that has like carbon in it that is still there. You can see it, but you have to actually open it in order to see what's inside of it. I don't know. That's just my own.
Cool. I like that. Because yeah, there's a whole scale of the clarity within a diamond, right? Like there's all these levels of how clear it is, and if it has any demarcations or anything like that. And the more marks it has, the less its value. The more clear, the more value. So we're even in our culture, we're saying we value absolute clarity, right?
Illumination.
Really valuable for us, and we associate that with marriage, with divine union, and we wear that around our finger as a reminder. So yeah, it's pretty, we leave ourselves these little clues, but we wear them on a superficial level. We don't take them to the depths of where we could.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, because you were bringing up earlier, as you're talking about that, that 62 is in our particular charts, but it's in a lot of people's charts, and it's relevant even if it's not, because especially, for example, today, it might be more relevant for everyone
100%.
since it's highlighting that. And I don't claim to know much about astrology at all, as Candice, but I see, when I hear you talk about it, I see it in my mind like a map, like a blueprint. And I see it like crystal lattice work, like all of a sudden have a vision of me at birth and then it lining up with all these planetary conjunctions or movements or cycles or whatever it might be. And then I take that into my now moment, because we hold access to all of those places and spaces, but sometimes those points are stronger at certain times because of, from my perspective, whatever it was we agreed to come here to do, or more specifically experience. Because I know I did a video recently talking about being on a mission, and that's a whole other can of worms, but part of it is just our experience that we came here to have.
I love that. And I love that you don't really know very much about astrology or the keys, because when we talk about it, I can see how that knowledge is inside of you, because you just pull it right out. And I'm like, yeah, it's really fun to play with you with that.
Yeah.
And it can almost confuse me a little bit, because then I'll feel like you do know more than you know.
Well, I love the fact that you're saying that, because it's innate. It's in all of us. And it's funny because I did, Candice, for everybody watching, it's like, you got to buy the book. And I bought the book. It's like this thick. And I think I opened like to one page and I was like, I'm good. But it's funny because we do operate in a blueprint inside of our bodies, in a blueprint. So it's our DNA. We are made up of the stuff of stars, right? So we have everything, and it's just helpful sometimes for me. You'll give me clarity on maybe why I'm feeling a certain way. And I'm like, oh, okay, I didn't know that, but that makes sense. Okay. And then it kind of helps us feel a little less confused at times, right? And trust. It helps me. It's like validation to trust myself that innately I am lining up with these conjunctions to assist me at some level of awareness. And that's what it's all about. And so those 62, back to what you were saying though, is illumination, right? Would you want to play with that a little bit? Because I'm all about the 8s and the 4s. Like,
okay.
But
well, yes, let's play with it a little bit. So 62, I want to talk about the animal archetype. So the shadow archetype is rattlesnake. The gift archetype is the lynx. And the Siddhic archetype is the woodpecker. So it's kind of fun to just feel into each one of those.
So the lynx, the woodpecker, and what else?
The rattlesnake.
Ooh, I love that. That's so funny. Before you do that, so really quickly, just to share as we're in this flow, I operate just like, I see those pictures, and it's like I do a lot with the Native American, the shamans, the indigenous peoples, like all of these different, that's my roots that I like to play with. And the woodpecker to me, represents rhythm and timing and the drum. And the lynx represents secrets and mystery, according to what I've read, but that's what pops into my head immediately. And of course, the snake and the cobra is the shedding of old skin, and the kundalini and the pineal. So,
okay. So I'll share a little bit more about this key. And I love what you said about those animal totem archetypes. So this 60-second gene key is also known as the language of light. It is a portal key. And you have this in your EQ, which is your emotional quotient, your emotional center. Mm-hmm. And it is a very intellectual key, which is fascinating that you have it in your emotional placement. So it's almost like you have an emotional intelligence, you have an emotional intellectual capacity.
Sometimes maybe.
Changeable for you. Well, you and I can break that down a little bit deeper off the thing, but the physiology of this key is connected to the throat. So if we see that we've got this key in the sun right now and Mercury is conjunct,
which is communication.
This is really highlighting the language of light and this open communication. So the shadow of this key, they say the stupidity of being clever.
That's so funny. You guys, I got to share on a personal note when you're talking about this. It's so funny because one of my things when I write, right, or I speak light language or whatever, when I first started coming online, I really was like, this is ridiculous. I don't know what this is. It's all a bunch of nonsense, my logical. And then it was like, no, just let it flow, let it come through you, and you'll be able to make sense of it later. Just stay in your heart. But go ahead.
So the 60-second gene key contains layer upon layer of coded information about the meaning and purpose of the cosmos. Behind its inner door, the 60-second gene key reveals what the gene keys themselves are and what they are for. They are the living language of light that lies at the foundation of the universe. So the 64-bit matrix is the core structural principle behind all art, science, and natural phenomenon. At the deepest level, the 60-second gene key teaches you the holographic language of creation. Once you've learned this inner language, you will see it repeated in fractal form over and over again in everything your awareness touches. It is a precise and infinitely complex, and yet it is elegantly simple to learn. Formed as it is from only 6 possible permutations of each of the 64 keys.
Say that last part again. I'm sorry.
It is precise. Formed as it is from only 6 possible permutations of each of the 64 gene keys.
I have to think about that one. I'm gonna ponder on that one. And you guys, this is interesting too. We're kind of sharing this because number one, I mean, Kandice does gene key readings, and this is part of what she's really good at. But also, when we're looking at this stuff and we're talking about what's happening astrologically, but also this has to do with genetically, of course, and our DNA. I just wanted to say on this note, for me, it's all about patterns, and it's all about feeling into those patterns and what they represent for each of us at different times, because it's a living light codex. So as you listen to what Kandice is describing, if you're watching this, maybe feel into and see, is any of this feel like, just be curious about it, because asking those questions and curiosity and playfulness is part of what leads us to not only more self-awareness, but that connection with the cosmic everything, right? And I don't even want to say cosmic, but I was hearing cosmic clock because I'm all about time travel right now, but that's another part of the video.
Oh, I love it. So in this key, they're saying the shadow is intellect, and they're saying intelligence is of the heart, whereas intellect is of the mind. It's important to clarify some terminology. Intellect is most often confused with intelligence and understanding. And they're saying that the acquisition of facts, the skill of manipulating those facts via language. Generally speaking, the more intellectual you are, the less intelligence you use. And they're saying that intelligence is beyond the mind. So through the 60-second shadow, man tries to solve the mysteries of life through his intellect, through in other words, through science.
And this is not saying that that's a bad thing. It's saying that's the shadow. So it's like you have to it's beyond what we can sometimes.
So the fact that science is on the cusp of undermining the very foundation of intellect speaks volumes about the extraordinary times that we're living through. However, the intellect is not designed to give itself up. It will fight on, disproving any theory that takes it out of its own factual territory. Only when humanity raises its frequency into the heart will it be able to use intellect to resolve this great paradox.
Yeah.
Put another way, the only way you can scientifically prove that God exists is to become God. Knowledge must then become knowing. Intellect must surrender to intelligence. And as a man of true understanding once said, the last shall become first, and the first shall become last. What this really means is that the heart shall lead the mind rather than the other way around. So this shadow talks about the abuse through language, and that language relies upon our frequency. And as you get higher into this key, you move away from our more logical language and you start to speak the heart language, which I feel like you and I enter there. And that's why I think it's so beautiful that you have this key in your emotional body. This intelligence key is you're communicating with, you're experiencing and utilizing intelligence in a different way. It would be, if this was in your mental sphere, then you might have a really hard time moving from intellect into, what's the next one? Into precision. And then it will go into what precision is.
I love the fact that you're talking. And so when you're visualizing, like when you say mental sphere, like I do see everything in bubbles. And so we have our physical body, we have our emotional body, we have our mental body, we have all of these layers like an onion. And I just want to point that out as you're reading this, because somebody watching might go, well, what does that mean? It's in my emotional versus my mental sphere. And we're always operating from these different mediums that are us, essentially.
Yeah. And your intelligence sphere, I don't know off by heart. There is a planet that governs that. There's a planetary you're like, where was this planet in your chart? That's the one that represents your mind. And I almost want to say it's your unconscious Venus, but I might be wrong about.
And I can't remember I don't retain all. I have to go back and look at notes and whatnot, which we're going to play with eventually. I'm super excited when we do that. But having said that,
I feel like I want to keep going in this key. So I'll just say a little bit about precision and then we'll open it up again.
No, I love it.
So in both cases, we are seeing the gift of precision being reborn. Precision happens when natural intelligence strikes a balance between the heart and the mind, but with one caveat, that the heart, the feminine principle, is given control over life, and the masculine principle, the intellect, then moves into service of the feminine principle, which is about intuition, listening and receiving rather than thinking, expressing, and transmitting. So I feel like, just as I read that, I'm feeling like a lot of stirring, warmth, and activation in my heart. Like it literally feels like it's fizzing. Like I just took an Alka-Seltzer and it landed here and it's like bubbling and fizzing. So I feel like this is happening within humanity, this balancing within every single person of their, I almost want to say like predisposition, but it's like orientation, their orientation. Their mind is falling into their heart and their heart is rising up to the crown. We're balancing out. We're coming into the heart mind, even though it really certainly doesn't look like that on the outer stage of it all. It really doesn't look like that. It looks like more mind is being amplified, and it almost seems like there's a losing of the mind happening, like it's getting really loud in that way. But I feel like that intensity and pressure really forces, honestly. Like it just makes people go, it really helps people to see that lunacy.
Yeah.
Check yourself.
I was hearing Dark Side of the Moon. The lunatic is in my mind. That one song over and over, he sings about Sid Barrett, who lost, did one too many psychedelics and ended up, lost in his mind. But as you're saying that too, when you said that, it's that I keep hearing membrane. And this goes back, by the way, to our last conversation. You had been talking about the previous gene key. Like they're connected. This is another layer of what was it? Not 22. It had something to do with, I'll think of it when I'm not trying to think of it. But you're talking about the heart brain, and you said, I was writing intelligence versus intellect, but not perspective, orientation. I love that. Like, I want to play with that word.
Yes. Yeah, it's a like or. And I instantly think of core, like it brings me into the core, the aura of the being, oriental.
Yes.
Or I am oriented, and then I think of I orienti, and then I think of the three magi,
and the three hairs.
Christ child, which I believe is a mythological, metaphorical story, which happened or not. That is the story of our self coming into our own self, the three aspects of ourselves coming into harmony to meet the divine child, following our own North Star. And then once we find that innocent child, which is within our core, or the three gifts present, the Trinity, it is that stellar alignment that happens within us.
So coming back to the heart brain, because that's been, so I think it's important with what you're talking about in relationships. So when I pulled the cards earlier, I pulled painted face, which is self-expression. And that is the throat, not just the throat chakra. Obviously it's we were talking about what you're wearing. You're wearing the wedding ring. You're wearing a tattoo. You're wearing something to express a deeper meaning of something. And if we're in this space right now, if we're stuck in the mind and we're stuck in a particular pattern of thinking, or, we're looking at outside and we are seeing the lunacy. I love that. Which is, right, Lilith, black moon, shadow, like the moon, Luna. So it's not being in a place of judgment. That's just the confusion, which isn't a bad thing. It's just a state of being. And that's what's being expressed right now. And when I say expressed, I always think of expressed, like when you juice something, you're expressing it, you're pulling out the juice. So it's the trick is, which the other card I pulled was Hyoka, humor in opposites.
Whoa.
The trick is not getting, which is coyote medicine also, but not getting caught and trapped in that's the mind. It's like you got to laugh at yourself, to find that inner child, and how you tell your story as the storyteller, which Hyokas, they tell stories by what they wear, the painted face, how the colors that they wear, how they dance. They're storytellers. And they're actually one of our greatest ways of learning a lesson. And not getting so, I do see this a lot, people getting really hung up on, well, that doesn't look that way. You're wrong. Right? We see it all over social media. You can't say things like that. You can't say it this way. And that comes back to the gene key that we're in, which is that chaos, confusion, illumination, intelligence. Well, there's an innate intelligence within all of us. And there's an inner child within all of us. And there's a feminine and a masculine. And the way that's going to present itself, it looks different for everyone. It sounds different. And it all comes back to that beautiful innate diversity in language. And if we've only been taught one language, but we have certain attachments to what those words mean, I'm seeing that being like so massive right now.
I'm just smiling because I was talking to a woman the other day who is like an ESL teacher, and we have English second language teachers that help out. I don't know if you have that in the States, but we have that in Canada. We've ESL teachers at each school. And I told her, like, I was in ESL when I was a kid. And she's like, oh, what's your first language? And I was like, English. And she's like, oh, you're one of those kids. I was like, yes, I am one of those. I was a dreamer. I literally could not be in class. I would go into my imagination, and if you wanted me to come back, it had to be worth it. Otherwise, like, bye.
Yeah.
I was like this dreamy kid that got put into English second language. And I think they have another name for it now because of the dreamy kids that are in there. And they're like, well, it's not really appropriate for it to be English second language. So I never really got rooted in that way. I maintained my dreaminess first, which is my access to my imagination, which really speaks to the 64th key, which is the final key, the aurora, moving from the shadow of confusion to imagination to illumination. It's connected to the pineal gland. And it says the chaos of the elements, confusion in itself is a perfectly natural state. Only when the human mind attempts to interpret it does it become bewildering. The ancient alchemists referred to this state as the massa confusa, the chaos of the elements, likening it to the primal swirling that preceded the birth of the universe. Confusion is a state where neither order nor structure, it is simply the state rippling with pure potentiality. And then there's one thing I wanted to read that just caught my eye as you were speaking. The gift of imagination, the art of life. So it talks about the suffering we feel is an illusion when it comes to our minds. And our minds hold the key to release this. Once you realize there's no point in trying to make the pain go away, you finally begin to see the loop you have been caught in. It is your mind that continually takes you away from the pain. As your inner spirit decides to face who you really are, for the first time ever, the mind's tricks are witnessed. That's like when you finally see the heyoka. You see it, and it looks at you, it smiles, it bows, and it leaves because it's done. As soon as you see the joke, as soon as you are in on the joke, it is just like, no, so long.
Yeah. The joke's
Now,
on me.
if you want to play in the joke, if you want to present the joke until, you can pass that on if you want to, or you can just now laugh because you'll see everywhere because it's projected from your own mind. And also, as you were speaking, I was thinking of the heart. Like I was just kind of seeing the heart rising up, and it's like almost like this journey of this heart resurrection, and how perhaps the heart is at the throat right now. Perhaps we're learning to speak with love and impeccability and truth, and no matter what it sounds like, we're just committed to the pure sound and having an initiation through that. Spoken to people in my everyday life that I normally wouldn't speak to that are bringing me that message. I had a man come in the other day to my work. I think he was 62, and he was talking about how age doesn't matter and how all that matters is love. And I was like, amen. Yeah, I'm all about that. And he was just like, well, how far can I go with this? And then he kept saying stuff to me and I was like, yeah, absolutely. Like, I'm all about that. And he was like, wow. And he just wanted to keep talking about love and how, um, he was so happy to find another person that he could just say all of that to. And at the end of this session, he looked at me and it was like a really intimate, not weird at all, eye gazing. And he was like, it was so nice to find another person to speak about love in this way. And like, what a treasure this has been. And I really hope that I get to see you again so we can talk about love.
I love that. That's so funny. I'm like seeing this picture. It's almost like that's the light within me, see the light within you. That's the namaste. That's the having that experience of just being able to just share. It's like you are one in that moment and you're giving the gift of it's not just holding space. It's pure connection. It's a charge. I'm getting goosebumps as I say that.
I was buzzing. Every cell in my being was buzzing and vibrating. And when I came out of that room, there was a girl that I work with who came to me and she just looked at me and she's like, what's happening? I can feel it.
Yeah.
And I was like, that was magical. Like, I feel like it was totally Avatar moment. Like, I see you. It was this I see you moment that was just affirming for both of us, that we both knew the truth of one another, which was love. And we were both committed to that as a path. And we had spoken about that. And it was just like, it was so exciting to meet that person along the way. He didn't know who I was. He didn't know what to expect. He was just coming in for a service and we just happened to collide that way. And I'm noticing right off the hop, as soon as I came back to my place of work, the people that are coming that just happen to get booked with me, it is that I'm having that over and over and over again. And every time, like, I'm not expecting it, I clean the slate. I'm just like, thank you. And then it happens again. So on that day, I was really on a roll. I was like, man, this is the most amazing day. It's so heart opening. And then as soon as I said that, the next person was the biggest challenge I think I've ever had.
Wow. Humor and opposites.
It was so funny because that same girl walked by me when I was dealing with the challenge. And I was like, this, I was swearing. I was like, beep, beep, beep. Oh, beep.
Love that.
Can you stay in your heart, even in this really challenging situation? But I was actually met with such a contrast. Like the person that was in front was, or in front of me, sorry. And this is like, how do I speak about this without sounding judgmental?
Yeah.
But the being that was there in front of me seemed to have no regard for life in the way that I do, or in the way, like, no reverence. It seemed like no reverence. It seemed everything was on a very superficial level. And a lot of the words that came out of her mouth actually was hurting my soul. So I had to hold space for that. And it's like, for anything, for something that doesn't know that it's love, for, you know, for somebody who doesn't value love in that way, or doesn't value life, or, you know.
Yeah.
Felt almost very like Kardashian level, but like maybe even more extreme.
Whoa.
And can I say that again? Like, am I judging by saying that? Like, how do I say it without judging, and just present the contrast to myself?
Yeah.
And I see that in myself. Can I see, like, right? Like that Robert Grant video when he was like going off about Trump, and he's like, ah, he's like, I am that I am.
I loved that.
Even before I saw that video, I was looking at this girl and I'm like, okay, that is
You
me.
guys, I'll provide the link to that video too, because it's so good. Yeah.
Oh, I'm like, this girl is me. This girl is me. Like, I know that. So I was just, it was weird. Like her energy was working on me even yesterday. I'm like still thinking about this.
Yeah.
Still thinking about her. Still
Which is
thinking
really
about,
powerful.
yeah, right?
And
Like,
there's that shadow again.
yeah.
If you want to judge it from that angle or from that orientation or from that perspective.
Oh, she was so beautiful too. She, like, when I picked her up, she was so beautiful that it was like startling.
Yeah.
Wow, are you beautiful? But then there is a difference in her beauty than the man's beauty.
Yeah.
His beauty went through my body and made all my cells come alive because of what he was holding and harnessing.
Mm-hmm.
Her
Pure
beauty,
energy, pure love.
her beauty was on a very primal, physical eyes. Wow, you're beautiful. But then as she spoke, she wasn't necessarily speaking beauty in the way that makes you feel that the beauty of life, the beauty of truth, the beauty of love.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a powerful teaching to me.
Yeah.
From her.
Mm-hmm. And you know, it's funny as you're talking about that, we were talking earlier and I'm tying all of this together as you're speaking. I'm seeing like, okay, this comes back with emotional intelligence. This comes back in with heart-centered frequency versus the mind. And I want to play with that for a moment because there's so much we could unwrap just from that one example, because what I've noticed too is when I'm doing sessions with people, it's different for everyone, but I've been able to tap in with that heart frequency a lot more and a lot easier. And in the people that I usually tap into that have it are not, you would not ever just see that person and mind and think that in your mind, like, oh, that person's beautiful, right? Which is, don't judge a book by its cover. But I do think it's important to talk briefly about judging. And then before I forget, I also think it's important to talk a little bit about what that beautiful woman represents. To me, she represents the mind from this particular example, not from an intelligence example. Although everything would be intelligent to a certain point, intelligence is what's animating the body. But what's animating her body, there is a disconnect, or it maybe was never sparked. There's what the word that comes through is lackluster. So there's not the same shine there, but that doesn't mean there isn't a diamond in the rough that just needs to be polished. And it's not my job or your job necessarily to polish that. But just by us, I'm getting goosebumps, just by us to hold that acknowledgement and that space of back to I am that I am. I am that I am.
I am.
All of a sudden, that shifts the frequency and the energy of that individual, whether we realize it or not. And sometimes, and us, of course, too, which is obviously what's important here, because they're going to make their decisions, but we're basing our decisions around our interactions sometimes with others. And also, it's that humor and opposites. It's that mirror. It's that reflection. And the judgment, sometimes we need to have that in order to recognize I am in judgment, but also to use it as a tool, just like the ego. We have this idea that the shadow, the ego, judgment, we need to work through all those things. But working through those things, it's there. It's a medium that we're using to work through. So we're utilizing judgment as a medium in order to see the I am that I am. And oftentimes we hear, oh, well, I'm not that, but we are. But it's also being able to, it's like, but we are, oh, we could go so many places.
Like the wheel. That's like the wheel and the keys. It's like the one leads to the many. The one is connected to the all. You are connected to all. There is no disconnection, and separation is an illusion. Separation is only degrees of experience. So being able to see that wheel, seeing yourself in the wheel, and then you see yourself in the wheel, in the center of the wheel, of the we all. I love that. The wheel is the we all.
I also like heal in that.
What is it?
When you heal, like you come
Oh,
into alignment, it's like you're in synchronicity. And it's the heal of, it's like you still need it you need that. That's your foundation to stand on. You can't have one without the other. But I also see that as when you're talking about back to orientation, I'm kind of fixated on that word right now. This is how I get, but it's the orientation on the wheel and seeing from, again, it all comes back to the heart, because we have this idea. So you didn't necessarily have that same conversation with this woman. The love conversation and that spark and that shine weren't necessarily there, but she gave you the gift of being able to process and work through coming back into the heart in order to find the I am that I am.
Yes, and I sat at her feet. Like I was working on her feet. I sat at her feet and witnessed. I was just there as a witness. And I think one of the other things that I took away from experiencing her consciousness was like, one man's junk is another man's treasure. Mm-hmm. Like somebody could be holding something that someone just looks at that and they're like, meh, just walks by, but like it is so valuable to you. Mm-hmm. Or like, like somebody who can see the value in all these patches of life. And it's like, no, look, if you just show a little love, put a little water and watch it grow. It's like somebody who's just constantly finding value everywhere. No, this is valuable. You can do this with this. No, look, this can come alive if you just, it kind of made me feel like that.
I kind of wanted to go back on your Kardashian comment, because I think it's important to play with that for a moment, because it's like, that was a trigger for me, just like you were talking about Trump being a trigger possibly for Robert Grant, but for a lot of people, right? What a gift from one perspective. So, but the Kardashians are a trigger for me, because I see all of this beauty, and they might be very beautiful on the inside as well. But for me, that's the mind. It's this idea that this is what beauty is. This is the definition of beauty. And therefore, this is what this comes back to communication. There is, again, boy, I could go into so many different flows with the words right now, because it's like they're all coming in. But it's this communication with that heart. It's not being expressed in a heartfelt. They might be passionate about their clothing line, or they might be passionate about their relationships, or they might be passionate about expressing a belief about something. However, there's another layer behind all of that. And that's that. And I don't even want to use the word disconnect, but it's like, once you spark that and you communicate from that space, from that deeper intelligence that's innate, that's when the magic begins. And I think for me personally, it's a trigger, because I see all of that beauty and I see it associated and attached to value. And that value is material value that is not innate. And that's what then ripples out, and young women and people in general are then influenced by that particular ripple and energy. And that all comes from the mind, that sometimes is misrepresented or misunderstood, or however we want to label it, as love. It is. Love has many different meanings. It has many different layers, but it's not that deep heart intelligence that animates all things. It's a piece of this particular value system that is attached to what we think it needs to look like, if that
Mhm.
made sense.
And I think we notice how a certain type of experience with outer beauty can really pull our focus and our attention and our energy outwardly. And it almost feels like it leaves a vacuum inside us,
Mhm.
a hole. So we keep getting pulled out to the surface, and the vacuum grows, which
Yeah.
is fascinating because the very first gene key is moving from entropy, which is the vacuum,
Mhm.
to freshness, to beauty. And it's called the Dance of Shiva. It's connected to the liver.
Mm.
And the secret to harnessing creativity actually lies in the first shadow. It's the secret to every gene key in this book. It lies in harnessing and accepting the energy that is latent within each of the 64 shadows. So it's like within every shadow is a potential energy, just like that confusion. It's just primal, raw energy. And the continual interplay of energy in your life makes you always want to maintain the happy side and escape the gloomy side, which I feel like can be a reflection of the beauty industry. It can
Yes.
be a form of escapism and play on our natural primal human tendencies to move towards beauty. A flower. Look at that flower. Look at that bird. Look at beautiful sun. Look at the beautiful sunset, sunrise. But then it's like when it's stormy outside, it can almost make us feel, oh, like, oh, right? Like it's our natural primal state of awareness that we're now playing with, or is it's playing with us now, or it's being extorted commercially and through the media and through icons such as the ones that we're speaking of.
This is what beauty looks like. This is
It
what
will
beauty
make you
is.
happy. This is how you maintain happiness. This is how you maintain a constant state of happiness. But
Mhm.
it does, it creates a vacuum
Mhm.
because it's a prop up.
Whew.
It creates a vacancy within. So herein lies the greatest flaw in your nature and the distortion of the energy of entropy into depression. Always wanting to escape depression, not understanding what depression is, not understanding the valleys and the peaks of life. To have a peak, you must have a valley.
Mhm.
Without the valley, there's no peak.
Right.
So,
By the way, I'm looking at beauty as you're saying, speaking about this, and it's kind of funny, how the synchronicities flow. The fact that it's even called the beauty industry, first of all, industry. And second of all, when you were talking about beauty, it brings us into sleeping beauty, beauty sleep, which brings me to Aurora.
oh, whoa. So the very first key is connected to the very last key,
The beginning
right?
and the end.
Yes. So the gift,
Whew,
when we move
goosebumps.
into freshness, that they talk about the beauty of melancholy. So to me, immediately, without even reading through this, it's like being able to channel the energy of beauty in the ugly, being able to see the beauty in the beast,
Yeah.
right? What is beauty to us is, we can think of from the seed growing all the way up into the flower. Beauty is actually wholeness. It's the whole thing. It's all of the states. It's accepting of the journey and the process and everything. So beauty at the acidic level, they talk about the Promethean fire.
Mm.
It's rooted in the power of light and fire. And it shines through a human awareness. It becomes what we call beauty. Beauty is the reason for life, and life is the reason for beauty. When the first city dawns inside you, everything in the cosmos is experienced as beautiful and fresh. That's incredible to me.
And that's perspective and orientation. back to that word. And that leads me into you just reading that in itself. And this is where it's so valuable to talk about this stuff, because it's this stuff that matters. I'm nerding out right now. It becomes matter. It holds a weight and a value, yet it's light at the same time. And all of this that you're talking about, entropy is the key there. So entropy is not order. It's fractured, not fractal. And it just playing with this for a moment, because when we're talking about a vacuum, there's so many people that are walking around that are consumed with this whole, not WHOLE, but whole, HOLE. And they're trying to fill it with something outside of themselves. Now, I'm a female. I like to color, my face. I like to paint my face.
My face and brush my hair. I like to smell like roses.
I'm thinking of that, Chris Farley. I don't wear deodorant. I don't. Anyways, yeah, it's like this. I do that too, but that doesn't mean I worship my deodorant. I don't worship my eyeliner. My foundation that I put on my face is not my foundation of reality.
It's not the foundation of your value. When I am speaking with young girls, I do counsel young girls on skincare and things like that. And I always say, this makeup is not to make you up. It's not to create a false you. Just use things to showcase, highlight, and enhance subtly what is there. You don't want to not look like you.
Yeah.
It's just
some people don't.
Right? It's just to enhance your radiance and skin's health as well. A healthy skin is a beautiful skin. It makes you literally look healthy, like you eat well,
Yeah.
And it's just really to look healthy and take that deeper. Drink water, get your sleep, wash your pillowcase. It's just really hygiene and having a relationship with yourself. I'm going to put this eyeliner on to accentuate the shape of my eye. And when I do it, I'm going to really appreciate my eye. Like I say, like when you're putting on your makeup, don't go, oh, I don't like the way that I look there, I'm going to cover my face. No, touch your face. Feel your skin. I love you. I'm going to put some moisturizer on. I love the shape of my eye. I'm accentuating it. You're adorning and you're adoring yourself. And there is nothing wrong with that. Have that deeper relationship with you. Take that time to have this ritual with yourself, to present yourself but like present, you're being really present with yourself and you're treating yourself as the gift that you are. Do it for love, not do it because you're whole and complete, not because you are a whole that needs to complete or compete.
Yeah, I know all your words. I'm like going into so many different places and spaces there. And you're talking about, and that is we could go into so many different layers, but the ritual is embodiment. That is a form of embodiment. That is part of the embodiment process for many of us. And recognizing as we're doing this, as we're participating in this, as we are creating a story, what words are we creating about ourselves as we connect with ourselves, our cells, our epidermis, our layers of our vessel, which is matter, which does matter, but recognizing that it's deeper than all of that. And it takes us back to that heart space. And you had brought up, so I drew this is the black hole, right? But when you connect this and you make it the space, the heart-centered awareness, this is where everything else is created from that inner innate intelligence. And you know, I love talking about Dan Winter, so I'm going to just do a little I'm just going to pause just for a second because I've got a little, we had to take a quick break, but a couple of things we wanted to go back into. Before we go back, we're going to go back into the gene key just a little bit, but I was telling Candice, well, I'll tell about my alphabet soup in just a minute. But the key to this, and we were talking about Dan Winter, is, and he does such a great job of explaining the science behind the heart frequency and love and bliss. And he calls, so if I look at this, I always think that's like two black holes, right? But in actuality, or you could say a vacuum, or you could say it has a particular geometry, double diamond, but he calls it two pine cones kissing. And that's his like little lingo that he uses to describe bliss. And the way that I understand, it's charge. And this leads me back to what you were going to start talking about, which was, before I forget, the rose. So there's synchronicities and symbolism in everything. And Candice had been talking about Aurora. And I was saying, well, that's my favorite. My favorite character is Sleeping Beauty. But it's not because of the story of Sleeping Beauty. It's all the keys and triggers that were used in that particular fairy tale, which has to do with the divine feminine and the divine masculine coming together. The kiss is that, and the pineal gland, the aurora. Her name is Briar Rose. So all of this creates a spiral, and it brings it back out of chaos, which really isn't a bad thing, but it's something, right? It's a state, right? And it brings it into negentropy or order. And it literally is a physical sensation, right, Candice? Like when you were working with that man, you guys activated that within each other. It was already there, but you heightened it when two or more gather and come together. And we're going to take this into the next level, which is some people are so far removed from that because they're so disconnected from their true source of light, because they're going and reaching for all of these other things, cosmetics or whatever it might be. And this is men and women. Doesn't matter who you are. Doesn't matter what label we want to label ourselves as. Ultimately, it all comes back to this. And what's happening is we're activating this divine communion with ourselves, with our cellular recognition. And we're then able to speak from the heart. It isn't just about saying what we're passionate about. Passion and compassion, even though they're held in the same type of vocabulary, have different meanings. I'm hearing compression. So I didn't know if you wanted to add to that. Sorry, I just went off on that tangent. Squirrel.
Yeah, the people that are consuming on such a extraordinary level outwardly to compensate become greater vacuums. So I'm just seeing like all these walking vacuums.
Yeah.
They're huge. And it's like creating consumers is like creating these huge vacuums. And it's a part of life itself and nature itself to restore order itself. So as part of nature, nature is calling to us to create those negentropic fields as a way to balance. So the more vacuum we're going to have here, the more pressure and call that we're going to have to come into implosion within.
I love that.
Those fields.
Yes, I love that. And we're going to start connecting with more people who can help us with that too. I think more and more.
Yeah, absolutely. So wanted to go a little bit deeper into the 62nd key because we feel like it's this huge activated center for humanity right now, the throat chakra. You know, just go and spend some time on social media. Like everybody's coming in touch with their throat chakra and their ability to project through it, through social media or whatever it is. There's a lot of pressure here for us right now as a human collective.
Yeah.
So the gift of precision is called the greatest step. So awakening is magical in its ability to bring about a natural balance within your being. So I'm going to dart around a little bit because these keys are so big and I don't want to read everything. So I'm just going to read little pieces that catch my eye that I feel are relevant. So the gift of intellect, if we were talking about a tree, we get really caught up on the tree and the definition, all of that. But in the way of precision, or in the gift frequency of perceiving, you take the tree into your being. You feel its aliveness, its mysterious aura. You actually breathe it into yourself. Precision is what happens when intelligence is born. It's not simply about being precise and exact at an intellectual level. It's a completely new way of seeing life. Precision is inspirational and original, and such inspiration does not depend on your vocabulary. When the gift of precision describes something, it arranges facts in a way that are inspirational and exciting rather than dull and dry. As this gift arises in a person, they begin to communicate with such economy and exactness that almost everything they say is beautiful, poignant, and seamless. Such people soon develop keen gifts as communicators, speakers, writers, artists, actors, or scientists. This gift is designed to find the limelight. When the heart leads the way and uses logic to describe what it sees and feels, others cannot help but listen. So this talks about this process, the 62nd key and the 31st key forming a codon ring. So it's talking about this process that takes place when a higher consciousness reaches the throat center in the human being. So I feel like this is happening for a lot of people. The throat center is where the greatest human initiation occurs. Once the higher involutionary currents begin to use your voice to transmit their truths, you begin a process of detaching from your own identity. This key allows access to the universal language of light behind all forms. When the pitch of your frequency allows it, the words you speak and their emanations change and begin to serve a higher purpose. This purpose is twofold. Firstly, it transforms you because it allows you to really vibrate your heart and transmit your love through language. And secondly, it brings more light into the world and spreads the transmission of your awakening to others. As your language becomes pure, more pure, you expose your heart to others and the world. You are taking the greatest step, the leap from worship to embodiment. So the gift represents the true power behind the gene keys itself, this 62nd key. Once begun, it will gather momentum inside you until you feel yourself literally taken over by your higher self. You will no longer use words that protect others from themselves, but will speak the truth as you feel it arising from deep within you, clearly and without projection. The fact is that the more rarefied your frequency becomes, the fewer words are available to you. So your language takes on a beautiful simplicity. And at the acidic frequency, it's impeccability, and it talks about the cosmometry, the language of perfection.
That's a new word for me. You know, it's funny, as you were reading that, I was thinking back to the example of where you had connected with that man. And I was thinking about some of the times that I've actually done energy work or not even, just even in connection through being in contact. Let me pause it just for a moment. Okay. So the geometry, Candice was reading the gene key. Also, as you were talking about that, Candice, the card that I popped out was just ironic from my animal deck to coincide with the other one is hummingbird. And it's 44. And you were talking about the planets, some of the planets that are aligning to you are 444. But also recognizing too, as you're talking about, so please continue. And then we had to pause for a second, so we're back on now.
Oh,
maybe I'll pause again. Okay. Carry on. So also, as you're reading this too, I keep seeing, it's ironic. I'm going to show the picture really quick of, oh, well, no wonder why I was reading the wrong one. So go ahead. I was like, this is so weird. It doesn't, but go ahead.
So it's talking about through the gift frequency, communication becomes more refined, very precise, especially through the medium of language. However, the city concerns the use of language at a level beyond our ken. Every single word has its frequency and vibration, and the order and syntax of your dictation creates a certain aura. At the Siddhic level, words do not come via the mind anymore. They are not thoughts that become words. They emerge directly from the void, naked and pure. If you look at the sayings of great masters, you may often find that they say contradictory things about the Siddhic states. For example, one may say that enlightenment can only be found through intense seeking, whilst another may say that nothing you will do will ever bring about the states. There appear to be many discrepancies between the words spoken by sages. This is because each still filters his or her experience through their own background, language, and culture. However, when someone manifests the 60-second city, they create an exact linguistic science of enlightenment. It is often amusing to note how closely related are the shadow and the city. Thus, such people will use the intellect to defeat itself through pure logic. They will also use language to demonstrate how futile language actually is, for it is language and thought that underpin the very illusion of the human state in the first place. This city may appear to be highly intellectual, and indeed it will appeal in particular to men who are more mentally polarized than women. These are the sages like Socrates, whose logical argumentation cannot be defeated because consciousness itself is using the left side of the brain with impeccable precision. In such cases, language itself can be used as a means to bring about surrender within another. These people are adepts at using language in extraordinary ways in order to highlight the grand illusion in which the human mind operates. But even more than this, the 60-second city brings the understanding that every cell within the universe is a divine word. This profound truth allows such a being to become a master of divine language. Because the divine alphabet is so simple, a true master can respond to anything and anyone anywhere with exact precision. The science underlaying all creation is sacred geometry. The eternal truths contained in sacred geometry unite all human sciences, arts, and approaches to understanding through either the left or the right brain. There is a cosmometry behind life that choreographs all actions. The closer you come to full awakening, the more harmonious your life flows with this cosmometry. When you finally merge into the ocean of consciousness, you achieve complete oneness with the divine cosmometry. Everything you think or say or do is no longer done by you, but by the whole. Therefore, it is done impeccably. The real difference between the city and the shadow is the complete absence of fear, which is the complete absence of self-identification. So divine cosmometry is the language of perfection. It is the manifestation of impeccability, in which your every moment and breath becomes an emanation of pure light. Your whole being is simply made up of living, intelligent lines of force that move and flow without resistance. There is no longer anything out of place within your being. There is no longer any need, agenda, or discomfort. All is exactly as it should be in you and in everyone else. The embodiment of this truth leads to the ultimate peace. You've crossed the great divide in the throat and can never again return to the illusion of separation. You have entered the language of light itself to see the one word in all words, the fathomless, the ineffable, the wordless, the impeccable beauty of being.
I love that. It's funny because there is that sense of back to what we were talking about earlier, that connection you had with that man. I'm just going to go back to that example of the heart. All he wanted to do was speak about love, but because he was doing it from that impeccability of the heart, which Carlos Castaneda and the shaman and is it Don Juan?
And Don Miguel Ruiz? He speaks about it as well.
I think, yeah, he's what, the 5 agreements or the, yeah. So and I never quite understood it when I read all the Carlos Castaneda books, like that one word got my logical, like, what does he mean impeccability? And I would look it up and I would look up the definition and I'd be like, I don't, just by being honest or authentic, like, but how do you know if you're being authentic or honest? And I read those books like 10 years ago, maybe, while I was going through these. And it was interesting because he also talks about death and rebirth, like always do act as if you are dying. So you are impeccable. If you know you're not going to possibly be alive tomorrow, you are operating from impeccability, most likely, most often, because you want to do the best, be, not as in a competitive or hierarchy, but just be that essence of who you are and have that impact on the people you connect with because you're here in the moment. And so many of us are in the mind about future and past that we lose that a little bit. And that's a whole other conversation, but not. And that example with you and that man, he was in that space. I've had that same example with the opposite. And I'm a word soup girl. I love words and languages and letters and geometry. And not that I understand geometry, I just understand geometry, understand. I bring it out in my wordplay. But having said that, I've just had that interaction, like eye contact or putting your hand next to someone's heart. And all of a sudden it's like, ring, this light comes on and this energy is then exchanged and connected to with no words needed. And it's almost like to explain that or to put it into words, you can't. So it works both ways though. And that's the beauty of it. You can have both or none at all, one or the other. Like that's part of being able, and the word I keep hearing is adaptability, adapting to any particular situation, circumstance, and connecting to that. When we're talking about heart and throat, I hear higher heart, higher throat. It's not just, it's that you said it in what you read, it's the bridge between the crown and the heart. It's a bridge, it's a passageway, right? A passage like in a book. It's a tunnel. It's working through, and what's happening is we're literally opening up that membrane. We're permeating through the permeation, right? We're dissolving that disconnect. And then that allows us to bring that up, that energy all the way up and speak it, because that's then, and I wanted to share this picture. I don't know if you can see it online. I'm on, what site am I on? BrettLarkin.com, just because I like the simplicity of his pictures of the throat chakra. So that's his depiction, circle in the triangle, in a circle. There's the wheel with extending to the petals all around, which also hold a geometry and a pattern. And this talks about Vishuddha is associated with ether. So I think that's relevant right now as well. And this ether element represents communication, obviously, authenticity, and purification. The phrase Vishuddha translates to Visha, impurity or poison, and Suddhi, which is purity. And it talks about the 16-petaled lotus. The 16 petals of the throat chakra is associated with the 16 vowels of Sanskrit. The vowels are light and easy to pronounce, signifying the airy quality of communication. This is why a blocked throat chakra influences the ability to communicate. It talks about the inverted triangle representing channels to our consciousness and soul body, a direct expression of our higher self. And it also talks about full moon, which I see this as the sun, not just the moon, but this was their interpretation. But I just thought that would be kind of fun to play with. That geometry and configuration is a connection to the mathematics of the universe, the numbers, the sound. So
I keep seeing this horn like coming from our heart all the way up, but it's all, yes, it's that, and it's also the cornucopia, like it's the horn of plenty, and it's got all of the fruit and everything in it, and it's like, yeah,
abundance.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we're in that space, which is funny because we didn't intend necessarily just to talk about the throat and communication today. But apparently that's something, as we kind of explore this, that's so relevant for right now. And I invite everybody that's maybe kind of watching this, we're seeing this outside of us too, playing out on, right, the big screen, on the internet, on social media. And it's like mind versus heart. Bring it all in. Bring it in for a hug.
I love what Robert Grant was saying about how he sees us moving into the age of Aquarius. He's like, it's the age of acceptance. It's the age of love and acceptance. And I don't know if he said this, but like love with your mind, feel with your mind, love with your mind, and like think with your heart. So it's kind of like merging them together. And
that's kind of that wordplay too, because as you say that, you have to think about it like, what? Gotta think with my heart. And again, this comes back to the things that you and I always talk about, the things I share in my videos, which is, and it's been shared throughout, it's heart brain coherence. It's, you know, heart math. It's mathematical geometry that puts us into stellar alignment, that brings us into the spark of the heart. We also talked about the fact that he brought up the crystals of the sages or the monks.
Amazing. So these high initiated Buddhic monks that had attained, like, I guess they say 10th level consciousness and above, when they're cremated, they find these little beads that were from their heart, and they almost look like little pieces of amber, and the bigger they are and the more clear speaks of the level of consciousness they attained. And in their tradition, they believe that that level of attainment moves on with your soul. That's what you take into the next life. And the way that I feel about this whole play and this whole experience that we're in right now is like, wouldn't it be amazing to like set that as our foundation, like love and acceptance as humanity's baseline?
Yeah.
It would be so amazing for us to transition and be able to hold that space together and create from that level and that way of being. And yeah, so we have some ways to go, but there's a lot of us that really want to take that on. Mm-hmm. And it totally starts as an individual journey. And to kind of pull from what we were saying in the last video, you must become the grandmother or the grandfather tree we have to grow in our trunk. We have to grow the trunk, the roots, the canopy, become really whole and full in that. And that creates that gives to all the other trees around us that are growing. It plants it in the bedrock of so that's what we can do. And we think I'm just one, and it's like, all it takes is one. Look at what one does.
Yeah.
We're still talking about some one beings that were here 2,000 years ago.
Yeah.
500, every 500 years, there is someone who comes along and becomes immortal in their story. Their story becomes immortalized in the consciousness of humanity.
Yeah. And as you're speaking about that, I have all these flashbacks to conversations I've had recently about, you're not just one, we're all one. So what you do matters. And the tree. But I also see that we didn't even go into the pineal gland. That throat, yeah. Well, that's also the spine. This is and okay, so I just went into so many different layers, but
the hummingbird.
That's so funny. So to speak briefly on the hummingbird is the nectar of joy. So that joy, and she's just like smiling radiance, right? That card is such a good representation of just speaking from the heart. So you're talking, and there's people out there that are like, okay, I would love to be authentic and I would love to live with, so this leads us back to, this is possible if we're all coming from a place of impeccability and authenticity. So if we're operating from our heart and we're coming from a space of impeccability, then we will we will speak with love. We will support one another, because there's this idea of like, okay, that's all great, sunshine and rainbows, Candice and Carrie, okay, accept everybody. But acceptance doesn't mean we're supporting someone if they're not in a place of impeccability. Acceptance just is recognizing within us what that is showing us, what that is showing, how am I that I am? And that always leads back to, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, the Ho'oponopono. It leads back to, if you guys look that up, the doctor that basically cured, the story of the doctor that didn't even see his clients, his patients. He just looked at their file and saw them as him and prayed, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you, I'm sorry, because he saw them in him and he in them. And so it's that, I'm getting goosebumps all over. And it's that exchange. That's the impeccability. That's where we're coming from. And once everybody does that on our own, that's my job.
That's acceptance for self. And that's why Robert Grant, when he saw something triggering outside another person, he says, I am that I am.
Yeah.
I am that I am. Ho'oponopono, essentially.
All the same thing. And it's back to this. That is impeccability. That's bliss. That's creating coherence. That's creating implosion. And then once we connect that, when we speak and we have our self-expression, we're able to see the humor and opposites. And the last card, by the way, was coming home, shawl. Those were the 3 cards I pulled. So it's like, by going through this journey and this process right now, we're shawl. Yeah.
I used to, and I still do have a shawl obsession. I have so many shawls, and I always used to say, yes, shawl. I'd come in with my shawl. Like, yes, shawl.
Oh, I love it. Well, what if you think about the shape of a shawl? Right.
Well, it's like a blanket that you can wear around, and you can even like hug someone and wrap them in, it's like, welcome to my heart chamber.
Yeah, it's comforting. Yes, y'all. I love that. Oh my gosh. So we could go so many places. Do you want to kind of wrap it up? Oh, we haven't done any wordplay in a while together, actually, now that I think about it. Oh my goodness. I don't know, that'd be a whole other video though, probably. I
It is.
mean,
Absolutely, it is.
yeah, so we should do a word play, because everything that you've talked about today and that we've shared, it's like, that is, I am that I am, literally, in this particular Gene Key card or reading. Like for me, on a personal level, I just want to share, and I'll share this in another video. I've been in that place the last couple of days, as Candice knows, of confusion, because so much is opening for me in awareness, and through listening, through our conversation, Candice and I and Jess and my friend Kat, and listening to people like Robert Ward Grant and Dan Winter. What that does is that I have all of these ahas, and I pull literally from the alpha bit, that soup, and I'm in that soup of chaos. And as I turn my direction and awareness onto a particular subject, which for me lately, it's all been about time travel. It's like, how is this possible? Where is this information coming from? Then it breaks it down into pieces and particles. And that kind of takes it out of the wave, which we haven't really talked about, that long wave of information or bandwidth in which everything is held. And then I come back to the throat. So if I go back into my heart, and we were talking about those beautiful crystals within the heart, and the amber is piezoelectric. It's piezoelectricity, which I used to always call piezoelectricity. And that goes back to the whole pie, the piece of the pie that you
said that. We said that off camera. So
yeah.
I was just briefly telling Carrie that I had a conversation with a friend, and we discovered, we kind of were talking about the meaning of life and the meaning of existence. And it all came to, everything was created to experience this moment of like eating pie and ice cream. It's like the Big Bang, everything that had to happen in order for us to have this delicacy or this treat.
Yeah.
Which ironically goes back into it all. It's like, we were joking, like it all turns to shit eventually. And then we're like, it's a fertilizer for the next pie eating experience. It will end up again in the pie.
Isn't that funny?
What is pie? It's geometry. It's the geometry and innate intelligence of life.
It's that golden, yeah, boom. So that's a simplistic way of representing the whole pie, the grand angle, the grand design, the scheme.
When you say confusion, I always think Confucius. And 2,500 years ago, when Confucius brought his teachings of knowledge, benevolence, loyalty, virtue, he was scorned at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And it's like, we have these great messengers bringing in these higher ideals of possibility and truth and wisdom, and it's not necessarily accepted in that time. And look at the times that we're in. Look at the main messages on the main stage, and that pressure that's putting on, and then the seeds of wisdom and truth that are being carried and birthed and spread all around. There isn't just one Confucius now. We have so many great beings that it's almost like, I almost want to say it's not even fair. And why am I saying that? Because one of these beings that we have the privy to experiencing in this life could be a highlight 500 years ago or 2,500 years ago, right? They would be a candle that would stand out amongst the darkness of the day. But now, if you really look, we have so many candles.
Yeah.
Candles, there's so many candles. It's just like, amazing. It's like everybody came and they're like, normally I like to come when it's just like, I'm going to get all the, I'll really be able to stand out against this dark backdrop. But there's so many candles, and yes, there still is so much darkness. So you still can see the contrast.
Yeah. But that's part of that pressure in developing the diamond.
Yep.
And oh my goodness, that was something that was really activated when in that video, was when he talked about the amber and the heart crystals. I want to come back to that because I had been obsessed like for a good year about chakras and crystals, and like I'd written down silver, gold, diamond, amber, and I'd had them all figured out. Like I think we met when I was on that ruby sapphire kick,
Yes.
or maybe that was in the beginning of our friendship, but I was like all about the ruby sapphire and the sapphire diamond. And it was code, and the emerald, it was code for a geometric shape and pattern within that heart. And as I have activated different layers, these stones come into my awareness, and amber was the last one. I'd written amber, and it's not even a crystal really. And it's right, it's resin. It's holding, I'm getting goosebumps. It's
resin from the tree.
From the tree, right? And it's nectar, right? It's fluid that then hardens. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that is hilarious. Yeah, that's the orange. And I hadn't figured it out until the other day. And that was like that combination lock that clicked into place. And literally, remember you were saying you were having all this popping going on in your head? I have that too, guys. It's like we're popping, snap, crackle, pop. These synapses are firing. Our pineal gland is click, click, clicking. Our ears are popping because we're growing, we're expanding. And as we expand, it's like pop. And I had that like, oh, that's what the amber was all about, what I wrote about 5 years ago or 4 years ago. And I'm going to dig a little deeper and do some wordplay off of that, because it's literally a piece of time. It's a time capsule. And it's so much more than that. It's timeless.
You're reminding me of something. I don't fully know what it is, but like as you were reaching certain levels of consciousness or awareness, that the jewels would appear to you, right? Yeah. So a few days ago, I was painting this woman's toenails, and it was a color I've never painted with before. And the feeling that it gave me, it was like I was painting with this like lime bright green on her toes. Yeah. And I was, this is really interesting. And then since I did that, that color is coming to me. And I think even in the Robert Grant video, I think he was talking about red and blue and green being this new consciousness. Green is like the level of this acceptance and universal, like of this love, this compassion. It's this green. And I was thinking like how beautiful and perfect that is, because it's like the green, the first color that comes out of the seed, like the shoot, like new life. It's so fresh and crisp and pure, and just the feeling that you get with that color. And now I'm seeing it everywhere. And when you said emerald, I was like, emerald, the Emerald City. Like, yes, okay, the heart, this is major. And, you know, we're talking about the heart crystals. I'm feeling these fizzy activations. And actually, at work, I've been telling you and Jess, like on the regular, I'm constantly fighting back tears just because I'm so present for people at my work that it's such a gift. I can feel the potency in the presence itself, and the gift of being able to witness somebody and then seeing how they respond to being witnessed. It just creates this beautiful energetic exchange that's so deeply moving that I'm getting my eyes are watering constantly during these meetings with people, and I'm noticing that their eyes are watering too. So it's just the presence itself, just which leads me to its acceptance. It is this level of acceptance and witness, which I know you and I and Jess all hold for each other. We hold this container of acceptance, which creates an unconditionally loving space, which is like the green new life. It's that green, fresh color.
Well, we're saying things and there's no, it doesn't matter what we're saying because it's unconditional love. You don't have a condition, you know, oh, this person said something and I thought they were like this, but they're really like this, and therefore I no longer. Because we're one of the gifts, and this is part of what's so important about people finding their soul tribe and their groups that they can connect with, because we've created a space that's literally creating, and this goes back to song lines and ley lines and dream lines. It becomes almost an ancestral communication that literally has an influence and an impact on our DNA, and also where we are located on the earth, and lucid dreaming. So we are essentially lucid dreaming now. As we share, I've got like, I just went poof. So it's so funny because we share all this stuff, and then at this hour to hour and a half mark, we get to the next level and we're at this next layer. And so as I kind of feel into this layer, we have, and I'm sharing this with everybody watching because it's important to be able to create that container space. If you're not finding it with someone else, again, it's I am that I am. So when, for me, you reached out to me, Jess reached out to me, and I reciprocated by seeing who you really were and recognizing a kinship in a lot of things. But my point is, it becomes, I'm having it at the grocery store. With the person checking me out at the grocery store, I'm just like, oh, this amazing eye contact and level of awareness of the human in each of us. And you brought up, and so I'm offering and holding that unconditional space. Now that person may turn around and do something that is that is not impeccable, but in that exact moment, it's a sense of impeccability that we're both sharing, and all that other stuff falls away. And that's been happening more and more in many different ways. And equally, like that woman you had the difficult interaction with at first, I'm having that as well, but it becomes a different type of experience and a different type of exchange. And the colors that you're speaking about, as you were talking about that lime green, I'm recognizing this, the idea about how we perceive color. We are only seeing a certain amount of the spectrum. And that is the cone. That's a flip. It's flip it and reverse it. Remember that flow we had on for so long, but it's a cone and it's a projection.
Guess what color I painted on the woman that I had the challenge with?
What?
It was jet black.
I was thinking it was going to be like that deep, deep red. That's almost, that's
no,
funny. Jet black, the whole.
Jet black. And the very next color was that lime green.
Ironic.
So I went into like the void, and then went into this heart opening experience, which it was.
Yeah.
But because I was challenged in that other experience, I wasn't necessarily tapped into that heart energy. So again, that is going to be a continued teaching for me. And I'm so thankful, right? I was initiated with that challenge from this very beautiful being. And
this comes back to us being invited not to get trapped into the mind. And sometimes I could visualize, like I could see me looking at this going, thinking, and missing that opportunity. Like, why was that person like this? Now I'm grumpy. Now I'm hungry. Like all the monkey mind comes into play because that trigger of that woman. But instead you chose to change your perspective around it. And it gave you the opportunity to then pull out the beauty, the crystal, the light, and the heartfelt experience with that next person that you were working with. Otherwise, it would have taken away and you would have gotten sucked into the vacuum that perhaps that other person was sucked into from one perspective. Because we're looking at this all as toroidal fields, and we're looking, we are tuning forks. So that's a whole other video too.
It did remind me of aspects of myself that I had been consumed with at times. And I was very thankful that I had stepped through that level and layer of initiation.
Yeah.
That I had moved past the grips of certain tendencies that could have consumed my entire life force energy, direction, and purpose.
Well, and when you say consumed, I do see it too. It's like giving into the nothing. I'm thinking of the nothing from Never Ending Story, but what I'm also seeing is, I found myself going back to a certain age when I was like that. when I was so consumed by what I looked like, what people thought of me, having to buy this or buy that to feel good about myself. And don't get me wrong, I still like to buy things that make me feel good, but I'm not consumed by it.
Relationship. And what I'm really connecting to from previous is really not knowing who and what I am, and really over identifying with an element of the character role that had been projected upon me from society, and me buying into that and believing that.
Yeah.
But the shoe never really fit.
Yeah.
Never really fit. So I was always falling and tripping, trying to wear it.
Well, it was a temporary fit. It was temporary, and you've outgrown it, essentially. You know, and it comes back to the painted face, self-expression. You know, I am the one doing the painting. I am also the paint. I am also the expression coming from. Oh, I could go on and on, but anywho, we should probably end on that note and give thanks to everybody for joining us in this self-expression and creative coming together and communication and recognition of one another. So thank you so much, everybody, and to be continued as always. Namaste.